#6 months after the divorce, the billionaire boss gets a call. "Sir, she named you as the father." The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Harrison Empire headquarters, a gleaming tower of glass and steel that dominated the Chicago skyline. On the 47th floor, in an office larger than most apartments, Alexander Harrison sat behind his mahogany desk, staring at divorce papers that had been finalized exactly 6 months ago today. He traced his finger over her signature. Emma Rose Harrison. Soon to be Emma Rose Mitchell again, he supposed. The name looked foreign now, detached from the woman he had loved, the woman he had destroyed with his relentless ambition and cold indifference. Alexander was 34 years old, a self-made billionaire who had built his technology empire from nothing. His father had abandoned the family when Alexander was 7, leaving his mother to work 3 jobs just to keep food on the table. He had sworn then, watching his mother's hands crack and bleed from washing dishes at the restaurant where she worked overnight shifts, that he would never be poor again. He would never be powerless again. And he had succeeded beyond his wildest dreams. Harrison Technologies was now worth $12 billion. He owned properties on 4 continents. He had been featured on the cover of Forbes, Bloomberg, and countless other publications. They called him the Golden King of Silicon Prairie, the man who had revolutionized artificial intelligence applications in healthcare. But tonight, alone in his office at 10 o'clock, listening to the rain and holding divorce papers, Alexander Harrison felt like the poorest man in the world. He remembered the day he met Emma as if it were yesterday. She had been working as a barista at a small coffee shop near his first office, back when Harrison Technologies was just a dream and a cramped room above a dry cleaner. He had been 26, exhausted, living on caffeine and determination. She had handed him his coffee one morning, looked directly into his eyes, and said, "You look like a man carrying the weight of the world. Whatever you're building, I hope it's worth it." No one had ever looked at him like that before. Not with pity, but with genuine curiosity and warmth. He had asked her name, and she had laughed, pointing to her name tag. "It's right here, Mr. Important. Emma. Try to remember it next time." He had remembered. He had come back every single day for 3 months before finally gathering the courage to ask her out. She had said yes, but only if he promised to actually eat a meal instead of just drinking coffee. Their first date had been at a tiny Italian restaurant where the owner knew Emma by name because she volunteered at the community center next door, teaching art to underprivileged children. That was Emma. While Alexander saw the world in terms of profits and losses, opportunities and obstacles, Emma saw it in colors and kindness. She had grown up in foster care, bounced between 12 different homes before aging out of the system at 18. She had every reason to be bitter, every reason to be hard, but instead, she had chosen softness. She had chosen hope. "The world has enough sharp edges," she had told him once, early in their relationship. "I want to be the place where people can rest." He had married her 2 years later in a small ceremony on a beach in California. She had worn a simple white dress that she had found at a thrift store, and he had thought she was the most beautiful woman in the world. His mother had cried tears of joy, telling him that he had found a good one, a keeper. "Don't mess this up, Alexander," his mother had whispered in his ear during the reception. "Money comes and goes. Love like this is once in a lifetime." He had promised he wouldn't. He had meant it with every fiber of his being. But promises made in the warmth of love are easy. It's keeping them in the cold reality of life that proves impossible. Harrison Technologies had exploded in growth during the 3rd year of their marriage. Suddenly, Alexander was traveling constantly, taking meetings in Tokyo, London, Singapore, Dubai. He was on magazine covers, being interviewed on cable news, giving keynote speeches at conferences. The world wanted a piece of him, and he gave it freely, generously, completely. What he didn't give was time to Emma. What he didn't give was attention, presence, the simple gift of being there. She had tried to talk to him about it. He remembered now, with painful clarity, the conversations he had dismissed, the concerns he had minimized, the tears he had ignored. "I feel like I'm living with a ghost," she had said one night, 3 years into their marriage. "You're here, but you're not here. Your body is in the room, but your mind is always somewhere else, always thinking about the next deal, the next acquisition, the next problem to solve." "I'm building something for us," he had replied, not even looking up from his laptop. "For our future. Can't you see that? Can't you be patient?" "I've been patient, Alexander. I've been patient for 3 years. But I didn't marry a company. I married a man. Where is the man I fell in love with?" He had gotten angry then. He always got angry when she pushed, when she demanded more than he felt he could give. The anger was easier than the guilt, easier than admitting that she was right. "The man you fell in love with was broke and struggling," he had snapped. "The man you fell in love with couldn't give you anything. I'm trying to give you everything now, and you're complaining? Do you know how many women would kill to be in your position?" The look on her face had haunted him ever since. It wasn't anger or hurt or even disappointment. It was something worse. It was the realization that she had lost him, that the man she had married no longer existed, if he ever had at all. Things had deteriorated after that night. Emma had thrown herself into her volunteer work, spending more and more time at the community center, the homeless shelter, the children's hospital. She had started sleeping in the guest room, and Alexander had told himself it was because he came home so late and didn't want to wake her. They both knew it was a lie. The final breaking point had come 5 months before the divorce. Alexander had forgotten their anniversary. Not just forgotten it in the sense of not having a gift ready or a reservation made. He had completely, utterly forgotten that the date existed at all. He had been in Singapore, closing a deal worth $800 million, and when Emma had called to wish him happy anniversary, he had been confused, then embarrassed, then defensive. "It's just a date on a calendar," he had said, hating himself even as the words came out. "We can celebrate when I get back. I'll make it up to you, I promise. I'll take you anywhere you want to go." The silence on the other end of the line had stretched for an eternity. "That's the problem, Alexander," Emma had finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You always think you can make things up with money, with trips, with things. But what I want, what I've always wanted, is something you can't buy. I wanted you. Just you. And you're the one thing you've never been willing to give me." She had hung up, and he had told himself she was being dramatic, emotional, unreasonable. He had closed the deal the next day and celebrated with champagne on his private jet back to Chicago. When he arrived home, the house was empty. Not just of Emma, but of everything that had made it a home. Her clothes were gone, her books, her art supplies, the photographs she had taken and framed throughout their years together. All that remained was a single envelope on the kitchen counter, containing divorce papers and a letter. He had read that letter 1,000 times since then. He had memorized every word, every punctuation mark, every place where her tears had smudged the ink. "Dear Alexander," it had read, "I'm writing this because I know if I try to say it in person, you'll find a way to talk me out of it, and I can't let that happen. Not this time. I love you. I have loved you since the moment you walked into that coffee shop looking like a man on a mission. I saw something in you that day, something beautiful and fierce and full of potential. I thought I could be part of your dream. I thought we would build something together. But somewhere along the way, your dream stopped including me. I became furniture in your life, Alexander. Something to be maintained and occasionally admired but never truly needed. I can't live like that anymore. I can't keep waiting for you to choose me, to see me, to remember that I exist. I have to choose myself now, even though it breaks my heart. Please don't try to contact me. Please don't send your lawyers to negotiate. Just sign the papers and let me go. If you ever loved me at all, give me this one thing. My freedom. Goodbye, Alexander. I hope you find what you're looking for. I hope it makes you happy. I hope one day you realize that the things that matter most in life can't be measured in dollars and cents. With all the love I have left, Emma. He had signed the papers that same night, not because he wanted to let her go, but because he finally understood that he had no right to keep her. He had failed her in every way that mattered, and the kindest thing he could do was exactly what she asked. The divorce had been finalized 6 months ago today, and Alexander Harrison had spent every day since then building higher walls around his heart, working longer hours, closing bigger deals, trying desperately to fill the void that Emma had left behind. It wasn't working. Nothing was working. His phone rang, jolting him out of his memories. He glanced at the screen and saw an unfamiliar number with a local area code. Normally, he would let it go to voicemail. Calls at this hour were usually from overseas offices or overeager reporters. But something made him answer tonight, some instinct he couldn't explain. Alexander Harrison, he said, his voice flat and professional. Mr. Harrison? The voice on the other end was female, hesitant, slightly nervous. This is Dr. Patricia Hendricks calling from Chicago Memorial Hospital. I'm sorry to disturb you at this hour, but there's a matter of some urgency. Alexander sat up straighter in his chair. What kind of matter? Is someone hurt? Is it my mother? His heart began to race. His mother was the only family he had left, and she was getting older, her health not what it used to be. No, sir, it's not your mother. Well, this is a delicate situation, Mr. Harrison. A young woman was brought into our emergency room earlier this evening. She was in a car accident, quite serious, I'm afraid. She's in surgery now, and the prognosis is uncertain. I'm sorry to hear that, Alexander said slowly, confusion replacing his initial panic. But what does this have to do with me? I don't understand why you're calling. Dr. Hendricks took a deep breath. The woman's name is Emma Mitchell, Mr. Harrison. I believe she's your ex-wife. Alexander's blood turned to ice. Emma? Emma was in an accident? How bad is it? What happened? I need to come down there immediately. Mr. Harrison, please, there's more. When Ms. Mitchell was brought in, she was accompanied by emergency services who found her vehicle. She was driving alone, but there was a car seat in the back. A child's car seat. And in her purse, we found documentation. Birth certificate, medical records, emergency contact information. Alexander's mind was spinning. A child? Emma has a child? I didn't know. We've had no contact since the divorce. I didn't know she had a baby. The silence on the other end of the line seemed to stretch into infinity. Mr. Harrison, Dr. Hendricks finally said, her voice gentle but firm, the child is 4 months old. A little girl. And according to the birth certificate, according to Ms. Mitchell's emergency documentation, according to everything we've found, sir, she named you as the father. The phone nearly slipped from Alexander's fingers. His heart stopped beating for a full second, then restarted with a thunderous crash that he could feel in every cell of his body. That's impossible, he whispered. That's absolutely impossible. We were barely. We hadn't been intimate in months before she left. The timeline doesn't. But even as he said it, his mind was racing backward, calculating, remembering. There had been one night, about a month before the anniversary disaster, when Emma had tried one last time to reconnect with him. He had come home early for once, and she had been waiting for him with dinner and candles and a desperate hope in her eyes that he had been too blind to recognize. They had made love that night, for the first time in months. It had been tender and sad and beautiful, and afterward, Emma had held him close and whispered, "Come back to me, Alexander. Please. I'm still here. We can still fix this. Just come back to me." He had promised he would try. He had fallen asleep holding her. And then he had woken up at 5 in the morning, checked his phone, seen an urgent message from his CFO, and slipped out of bed to take the call. By the time Emma woke up, he was already gone, flying to New York for an emergency board meeting. He had never mentioned that night again. He had buried it under a mountain of work and denial, and when Emma had left a month later, he had assumed that it had meant nothing to her, just another failed attempt at connection. But if the timeline was right, if what this doctor was telling him was true. "Mr. Harrison? Are you still there?" "I'm here," he managed to say, though his voice sounded strange and distant to his own ears. "The child. Where is the child now?" "She's here at the hospital, in our pediatric unit. She wasn't in the car during the accident, thankfully. She was being cared for by a neighbor. But with Ms. Mitchell's condition so critical, we need to make arrangements for the baby's care. The documentation lists you as the father with full parental rights. You're the only emergency contact listed." Alexander was already on his feet, reaching for his coat, his keys, his wallet. "I'm coming. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't let anything happen to either of them. Whatever treatment Emma needs, whatever resources, I'll cover everything. Just keep them safe until I get there." He hung up the phone and ran out of his office, past the night security guard who stared at him in shock, into the elevator, through the parking garage, and into his car. The rain was still falling heavily, but he barely noticed. His mind was a hurricane of emotions: fear for Emma, disbelief about the baby, guilt about everything that had led to this moment. A daughter. He had a daughter. A 4-month-old little girl he had never met, never known about, never had the chance to love. Why hadn't Emma told him? Why had she kept this secret? Had she been planning to tell him eventually, or had she intended to raise the child alone, completely removing him from their lives? And what kind of man was he that his ex-wife had decided he wasn't worth including in his own child's life? The drive to Chicago Memorial was a blur of rain-slicked streets and blinding headlights. Alexander parked in the emergency zone, not caring about tickets or towing, and ran through the sliding doors into the harsh fluorescent light of the hospital lobby. "I'm looking for Emma Mitchell," he said to the woman behind the reception desk, breathless and dripping rainwater on the floor. "She was brought in from a car accident. Dr. Hendricks called me. I'm Alexander Harrison." The receptionist's eyes widened with recognition at his name, but to her credit, she maintained her professionalism. "Yes, Mr. Harrison, we've been expecting you. If you'll follow me, I'll take you to the surgical waiting area. Dr. Hendricks will meet you there with an update on Ms. Mitchell's condition." Alexander followed her through a maze of corridors, past bustling nurses and beeping machines and the omnipresent smell of antiseptic that reminded him of his mother's countless hospital visits over the years. His heart was pounding so hard he could barely hear anything else. Dr. Hendricks was waiting for him outside a set of double doors marked, "Surgical Unit, Authorized Personnel Only." She was a small woman in her 50s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and gray-streaked hair pulled back in a practical bun. "Mr. Harrison, thank you for coming so quickly. Let me update you on Ms. Mitchell's condition. How is she? Is she going to be okay?" Dr. Hendricks hesitated, and that hesitation told Alexander everything he needed to know. "The accident was severe, Mr. Harrison. Ms. Mitchell's vehicle was struck by a drunk driver who ran a red light at high speed. She has multiple fractures, internal bleeding, and a serious traumatic brain injury. Our surgical team is doing everything possible, but I want to be honest with you. The next few hours are critical. We won't know the full extent of the damage until she's out of surgery." Alexander felt his legs weaken beneath him. He had to grab the wall for support. "She could die? It's possible. I'm so sorry. I know this isn't what you want to hear, but I believe in being truthful with families. Ms. Mitchell is fighting hard, and we're fighting with her. But you need to prepare yourself for any outcome. Any outcome." The words echoed in Alexander's head like a death sentence. Emma, his Emma, the woman who had loved him when he had nothing, who had believed in him when he didn't believe in himself, who had given him everything and asked for so little in return, she could be dying just a few feet away from him, and there was nothing he could do. "Can I see her?" "Not right now, no. She's still in surgery. It will be at least another few hours. But there's someone else you can see, if you're ready." "The baby." "His daughter." Alexander nodded, not trusting his voice. Dr. Hendricks led him to a different elevator, up to the pediatric floor, which was decorated with cheerful murals of animals and rainbows that seemed almost obscene in the face of so much tragedy. They stopped outside a room with a large window, and Dr. Hendricks gestured for Alexander to look inside. There, in a small hospital crib, surrounded by soft blankets and stuffed animals that the nurses must have provided, was the most beautiful thing Alexander had ever seen. She was tiny, impossibly tiny, with a crown of dark hair that was unmistakably his and rosebud lips that were pure Emma. She was sleeping peacefully, one tiny fist curled against her cheek, completely unaware that her mother was fighting for her life just a few floors below. "Her name is Hope," Dr. Hendricks said softly. "Hope Elizabeth Mitchell. Born 4 months ago at this very hospital, 7 pounds, 4 ounces. Completely healthy, according to her medical records." Ms. Mitchell was clearly a devoted mother. Hope. Of course Emma had named her Hope. It was so perfectly Emma, so perfectly representative of everything she believed in, everything she had tried to teach him during their years together. Alexander pressed his hand against the glass, tears streaming down his face without shame. His daughter. His little girl. A child he had helped create, a life that existed because of that one tender night when Emma had begged him to come back to her and he had failed, as he always failed, to be the man she deserved. "Can I hold her?" Dr. Hendricks smiled gently. "Of course. You're her father. Just scrub your hands first, and try not to wake her too suddenly. Babies need their sleep." Alexander followed.